Hi writers. Yesterday when I had you read Jim Howe's Everything Will Be Okay in class, I could tell that everyone in this room was pretty moved by the narrator's story. What was even more compelling than the topic he chose, it was his incredible craft as a writer. And I think whenever someone takes your breath away, when you get angry in response to text, I think that should be your cue to pause and study what the author did that was so powerful. It helps to ask, what makes this writing so powerful and amazing? How did the author make that? The goal is to bring all that you learned from your mentor text into your own writing. Today, writers, I want to teach you that we read other authors' texts not only to experience the character story, but also to admire, study, and then produce that same quality of writing. So you're going to watch me as I look at a little bit of my marked up copy of Everything Will Be Okay. And as you can see, every time I reread this, I start to make some notes. I notice that parts are especially powerful to read, and I keep track of those parts by circling them and highlighting them and writing words off to the side. And there's one area I'm going to start with here. This is the scene where the brother comes in and he's pretty aggressive. And it's like the author is one of my writing teachers. He expects me to study this part where the brother's being pretty aggressive and admire him and say, what's he doing that I could try? So here's one part that I circled. Come on, Paul says in his take charge voice. Get that box now. Bring it on in here. He flicks on the light in the waiting room. You're coming in back with me, he commands. I'll need your help. What are you going to do? I ask. I'm holding the box tight against my chest. I feel Smokey moving around inside. What do you think? He says. You heard your mother. That kitten is sick. Bad sick. Straight off, I notice this passage affects me as a reader. When I read it, I really dislike Paul, and I feel compassion for Jim. Now that I notice I'm affected, I ask, so how did he do that? I'd ask that question if this part made me laugh or if this part made me furious. Either way, my point is to study the craftsmanship that allowed the text to get through to me. So how did he do that? I'm noticing that there's definitely dialogue here. But it's more than that. I know that he's making this sound realistic, and when the narrator and Paul talk, I notice that it's the way that the author makes Paul talk, and it makes me sense that Paul's kind of condescending and insensitive, kind of mean. He's maybe even a little bit cruel. I think that the author wrote this dialogue in a way that shows Paul's feelings. Let me reread a bit of Paul's talk to you. As I reread Paul's talk, you're going to notice how I'm making my voice sound a little impatient and bossy. Come on, Paul says in his take charge voice. Get that box now. Bring it on in here. And then down here. What do you think? You heard your mother. So yeah, I think that's it. The way Paul is speaking to his brother, his tone is coming through in this dialogue. And it's giving me all sorts of ideas about the kind of brother that Paul seems to be. Are you also feeling that from his tone, his way of talking? So as writers, you might be able to try out this technique. You can make your characters talk in the tones that let their personalities come through and that hint at the bigger meaning of the moment. What I'd like you to try is I'm going to have you reread from here to the end of the story. So we'll go on to the next page as well. And what I'd like you to notice is what way could you take what the author has done with the tone, and where do you really see that tone shining through? Is it Paul talking? Is it Jim talking? What's happening that really makes that feeling, that hatred that we have for him shine through? So pause the video, take a moment to grab a highlighter and a pen, and make some marks. All right, now that you're back, what we want to think about today is that the author did something that we can try in our own writing. He puts in those little details, like Smokey clawing at the inside of the can, that really get to us and make us know exactly how he's feeling. He really makes Paul a brother that you'd want to hate. He really makes Jim a character you'd want to step up and say something back. So we learned today that when writers read the work of other authors, they first read to experience the story, and then they reread the text, asking themselves, what did this author do that I could try in my own writing? So when you go off today, you'll want to read over Everything Will Be Okay again, perhaps. Maybe find some new lessons that you can take away from this mentor text. maybe things that you can imagine adding to your own writing. What I'm going to ask that you do in your writer's notebook is go ahead and take a peek in your Create section and see if there's a story that's unfinished that you might want to finish. And as you're finishing one of those unfinished stories, think about today's lesson of having tone, of stealing ideas from this author and putting them into our own writing. Perhaps you want to take something, and this is my writer's notebook from a few years back where I actually have some entries. Don't judge me on my other ones. I don't have entries yet, but I will eventually. But this is one where I wrote an entry about my little Neanderthal, Tyler, when he was like 3 years old. I compared him to a Neanderthal. So like a little crazy caveman living in our home. But maybe I want to go back and try to get that tone in there. Maybe I want to pick a character. Maybe I haven't really put myself as a character in any of the setting, and I want to add in some dialogue that's going to show what it feels like to be the mom of a Neanderthal. So I can use this mentor text today to guide my work as a writer. So whether you're adding to another story or you're creating a brand new story, today and every day, I want you to think about having a mentor text by your side to guide you in the work that you do.